This is the Gara Carbon 2, and with it, Diadora hopes to land itself in that upper echelon of performance running. And while it is a beautiful shoe, it's time to see if the Gara Carbon 2 has got it where it counts. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kafuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I want to talk to you guys about the Diadora Gara Carbon 2. But before I give you my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Diadora provided to me for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to include their shoe in this video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Gara Carbon 2, and let's start with the specs. There's a 40mm stack height shoe with a 5mm drop, giving us 35mm of stack height in the forefoot. Now, the midsole of this shoe is comprised of Diadora's Anima PBX. That is a PIBA-based foam that they're using for the shoe. And there's two layers of it, a top and bottom, that sandwich a carbon fiber plate, a full-length carbon fiber plate. Now, this carbon fiber plate starts out really high in the back of the heel, swoops down low, and then has an aggressive curl up. Now, you can see that carbon fiber plate in here, and you can get a sense of the aggressive angle of the plate through the window that's in the center of the shoe here, but you can also see that there is exposed foam as well as rubber coverage. There's rubber, basically a pad of it in the front of the foot, and then two skids on each side of the heel in the back. And the compound that they're using for this outsole is Diadora's Duratec 5000 rubber. Now on the upper, we have matrix material for the upper, MATRYX. That's a name brand that's known for making strong but light and breathable fibers, and that's what's in this shoe. As far as fit goes, I went true to size. I went with my normal running shoe size, and that worked out really well for me. The material is lightweight all through the tongue as well, but it does transfer into something that feels like plastic on the front side, but on the side that would touch your foot, it feels like there's like a micro suede or felt. Now, the laces that they use here are a curly lace, which I tend to enjoy in race product because I feel like the little ridges give the, I keep wanting to say noodle because this is an Italian shoe, but it gives the laces a little bit more texture so that they are less likely to untie themselves as you are running your race. Now, through the heel collar, there is a generous amount of padding back here. I mean, not for a daily trainer, but for a race shoe, there's more padding than I typically see. And it's all very comfortable to the touch and on foot while you're racing. And there is a little bit of structure in this heel cup. Not a ton, it's not super stiff. You could still kind of bend it, but there's a little bit of sculpting that's going on back here. Now, Diadora is saying that this shoe comes in at a weight of 230 grams, but the size of shoe that they use for that is a UK size 9, which translates to a US men's size 10. Using reference size, which is also my size, US men's size 9, my shoe came in at a measured weight of 7.2 ounces or 206 grams. Now that we've talked about what this shoe is like on paper, let's talk about what it's like on the road. The Diadora Gara Carbon 2 is a comfortable racing shoe. It's got a really nice amount of cushion. It's still a very responsive shoe. It still feels like a racing shoe, but it's not the most aggressive shoe that's on the market. I'm enjoying the amount of compression that the shoe has, and it's compressing at a relatively slower rate, it feels like, than some of the more aggressive foams. And it's also decompressing at a little bit of a slower rate. So it's giving me a sense of good energy return. I feel like it's giving me back a lot what I'm putting into it, but it's giving it to me in a soft kind of way because it isn't a rapid decompression. And the other thing that slow compression and decompression gives me is a sense of stability. Because it's not compressing super fast, when my foot hits the ground, there's time for my foot to kind of feel where it's landing and to feel what's going on with the foam underneath me. And I also feel like it's slightly wider than a lot of the other race shoes that are on the market. And so that gives me just more surface area to land on. And I think another thing that's contributing to that sense of increased stability, or I guess less instability, is that it feels like this shoe is not as rockered as a lot of other racing shoes on the market. Now, it looks like there's a pretty aggressive curl here in the toes, but I feel like just the way it kind of fills out or the way the shoe is compressing, I feel like it's pushing a lot of this foam out and kind of taking up this space of this curve. So it feels pretty flat in the forefoot when I'm landing. And so that also increases that sense of stability and just a solid landing pad from which I can push off of into my next stride. Now, the downside of that, though, although all that sounds great, is that it makes the shoe feel a little bit less speedy still because of that. And so I feel like sometimes I'm having a hard time really getting over on this shoe because there's just a lot in the forefoot here. It's not as rocketed. The geometry isn't quite helping me as much, or at least the geometry combined with the way that the foam behaves isn't helping me quite as much to get up on that toe to push off for that next stride. It feels like I'm doing a little bit more work myself in order to get pushed into that next footstep. Now let's wrap up the video by going over the buying guide, and we'll also discuss some alternatives. The Diadora Gara Carbon 2 is a comfortable and approachable carbon fiber shoe. I don't think it quite makes it into the top tier of marathon race product, as it's not as aggressive as I personally like my marathon race shoes to be, but that might be its biggest strength. For people who are new to carbon plated shoes and are put off by the latest gen marathon racer, or for people for whom those other carbon plated shoes didn't work, the Gara Carbon 2 might be exactly the type of race shoe that you've been looking for. But this shoe retails at $300, and I think that's just way too expensive for what you're getting. There is a prior version of this shoe that is still available. I have not personally tested that shoe, so I can't say if it's a reasonable alternative. So instead, let's take a look outside the brand and see what else the competition has to offer. Now, I think the shoe that reminds me of the Gara Carbon 2 the most is one that came out a while ago. I don't have it anymore, unfortunately, and that's from New Balance. It's the RC Elite version 2. They since switched to SC Elite, but before that it was RC Elite version 2. And I think that if we look at the outsole here, and I have the SC Elite version 3, the version that came after it, so you can still see some comparisons kind of in hand, but I do have some old footage of it that I can also show you. But if you look at the outsole specifically, there's definitely some resemblance between the two shoes, and just generally the striations that are in this midsole definitely harken back to what I saw in the RC Elite version 2. And I think the overall experience of that shoe, I remember that shoe being very comfortable and very approachable for a lot of people, and it wasn't the most aggressive of race shoes. I think I ran CIM in it back in 2022, I want to say. But I don't really like to do comparisons against shoes that don't exist anymore. So I think that the shoe that does still exist and that you can buy, at least from reasonable and reputable places, is the successor to the version 2 and version 3, and this is the SC Elite version 4. And I think that the way that these two shoes are similar is that they're both very comfortable for long time on feet. They do have carbon fiber plates, but they're not super aggressive. And I feel like these shoes, again, are very approachable, that a lot of people can try these and not feel like they're too aggressive or too difficult to run in. I feel like a lot of people will be able to run very well in each of those shoes. Now that shoe comes in at $250, and it's a little disappointing that it's still at full retail price, because we're now starting to see some of the early images of the SC Elite version 5, the successor shoe, and I think that should be coming out in a couple months. And this shoe, the SC Elite version 4, has been out for a very, very long time. And so I feel like it should be on sale by now, but hopefully we'll be seeing some sale inventory prices on it soon so you can get it for even less than that $250. Now, the other shoe that I think that we can compare against the Gara Carbon 2 is one that when I was running in this shoe, even though the geometries felt different, I felt like the foams were behaving pretty similarly. And so that shoe is from Asics, and that's the Metaspeed Sky Paris. Now, again, these two shoes are quite different in terms of the geometry, the plate positions, and kind of the way the shoes are set up. The Metaspeed Sky Paris is a shoe that I think is in the top tier of marathon racing shoe, and it's as aggressive as I like my marathon shoes to be. In fact, I kind of wish it was just a little bit more aggressive than it was in this version of the shoe. But I think a lot of the differences in feel between these two shoes comes from the toe spring is a little bit more aggressive in the Sky, and so I feel like you're getting up on the toes quickly, and the foam, while it does feel similar to what's in the Gara Carbon 2 and the Anima PBX, I feel like the Metaspeed Sky Paris is decompressing a little bit faster and giving me a little bit more sense of responsiveness and not so much softness in the shoe. And so ultimately, I feel like if you like the Metaspeed Sky Paris but wanted something a little bit toned down, that's exactly what the Gara Carbon 2 is. And so I feel like these all kind of fit on a spectrum of comfortable racing shoes, with the Metaspeed Sky being on the far end of the spectrum and being not super comfortable, and then the Gara Carbon 2 is kind of in the middle, and then on the far end of the comfy spectrum would be the RC Elite version 2. So those are my thoughts on the Diadora Gara Carbon 2. Let me know in the comments if you have any other questions, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?